Hello and welcome back to the KCC channel. I'm Dave and I hope your day doesn't suck. Today we're jumping into some ProRevenge archives. Our first story today comes to us from Ann Passenborough. Was 5 minutes worth 30% of your global market? Let's jump right in. So I used to live in Deutschland, and upon returning to fair Blighty, the UK, I began looking for work. Being a simple man of simple needs, I quickly found employment in the marketing department for a medium-sized industrial manufacturer. It was a little below my experience level and qualifications, but I take what I can get because I am a simple man. At the final interview, I mentioned it would be top banana if I could arrive 5 minutes early and leave 5 minutes early on most days so I could catch my train. With a smile, my new boss, hereafter referred to as Mentirosa, said of course, it's only 5 minutes and I'd still be working the full 8 hours. Sin problema, OP, and welcome aboard. My first day comes and I ride the choo-choo all the way to my new workplace, eager to begin. I quickly learned that the lunchroom is pure stank, senior staff put their name instead of mine on any trade article I get published, and that our job mostly consists of extorting money from our own sales staff. But that's life. I am a simple man, and so I set about my labors, glad to earn a crust. What really flogged my noggin, however, is La Mentirosa calling me into her office on my second day and telling me I can't leave early again because it is unprofessional. I remind her of the conversation we had, in which she said, with her mouth, the words, "It will be no problem for you to arrive and leave 5 minutes early." She smirks and replies, "Maybe I said that, but is it written in your contract?" Touché, you big ol' Mentirosa, touché. I shrug and get on with life, because that's life. But, of course, I start looking for other work. By making me stay the 5 minutes, La Mentirosa makes me miss my train and turns my 2 hours daily commute into a 4-hour one. Niet druk. I do not want this. I am a simple man and need my downtime. About 2 weeks later, the company goes on a firing spree. One of those people fired is me, because I have been quite openly looking for other work. I am given 2 weeks notice and smugly told I am not good enough for this place, and that I will never work in the area again because of La Mentirosa's contacts. As she Snapchats this news to the rest of the team, I joke you not, I reflect that she is probably right, as I am a simple man. Among the other victims of the purge is the regional sales manager for Germany. This is more important to the company than my meaningless departure, since the company also decided to end the contract with their biggest German distributor, and so suddenly, a huge part of the company's core market is not active, and they have no salesman to find them a new distributor. Management panics until La Mentirosa remembers that her despised marketing bandit is a fluent German speaker. And so the fun begins. She asks me to step up to the plate. "Be a buddy, old pal. I didn't mean it when I said you'd never work in this town again." I am a simple man, so rather than point out that I am not being paid anywhere near what I could earn as a translator, rather than remind them that they have just fired me and I am not their friend anymore, rather than asking, "Is it written in my contract?" and then smirking like an obnoxious dingwall on a high horse made of douche, I instead swallow my pride and agree to help out. It is here that the twin revenges named inadequacy and abandonment make their entrance. Firstly, inadequacy. During every conversation, I mention my job title, advertising assistant. When the friendly Teutons politely ask why a lowly assistant is negotiating this kind of deal, I simply explain that the regional manager was let go and there is no formal replacement. This is entirely true, but is also a huge red flag for any serious company, especially well-established German manufacturing firms, and combined with the temporary uncertainty regarding Brexit, which had been announced only a few days prior, was enough to kill any interest they had in becoming our next distributor. Secondly, abandonment. As I am a simple man, I forgot to tell La Mentirosa that I had already received and accepted another job offer. She was thrilled at the praises she was getting from management for finding a stopgap solution to the catastrophic damage they had done themselves, and she asked me if I could actually stay on with the company until they secured a new distributor, since I obviously had nothing better to do with my time, being fired and all. I assured her there were no hard feelings over my firing and that I would stay to help as long as I could. On the day I was originally due to leave, I held my calls, drew up a summary of where we stood. It was effectively a sad emoji followed by a poop emoji, handed it to La Mentirosa, and explained I was leaving to enjoy a week of holiday, followed by starting a new job in a different field. She sputtered. She couldn't believe it. She thought I would stay longer to help clean up the mess. They still had no distributor and no sales manager for Germany. They were hemorrhaging money. She called me out, reminding me that I had said I would stay, but I am a simple man, and so my only reply was, maybe I said that, but is it written in my contract? This was an absolutely wonderful setup for revenge. They pay you dirt, tell you you're fired, but then give you access to a room of people that they can't communicate, but they need them for their revenue, and they trust you to not royally screw them? I mean, come on. Do me a quick favor, have a look down below the video. If that subscribe button's still red, it means you're not actually subscribed to the KCC channel. Please hit that subscribe button for more daily Reddit stories. Our next story today comes to us from Yummy1756. Girls shouldn't win math competitions, so my son should win. Let's jump right in. I'm a high school teacher, and this happened to me in 9th grade. I'm sorry for any grammatical errors because English is not my first language. My teacher decided that I should compete in a math competition because she saw potential in me. I agree because she was my favorite teacher. I did not really care that much because I was kinda lazy at that time. On the day of the competition, I saw a kid, let's call him Entitled Kid, boasting about how he didn't sleep because he reviewed everything. I was annoyed, but I didn't really think much of it. The results came, sure enough, he won, but I got second place. I was shocked and happy at the same time, and so was my teacher. Everything was all sunshines and rainbows until I heard this lady, entitled Mother. Good thing that girl didn't win. I was only 2 points behind. This is a math competition. My boy should win. He studied really hard for this, and a girl shouldn't beat him. I was livid. My teacher patted my back and told me not to listen to her. When they announced that I was in second place, Entitled Mother started booing. This woman, I couldn't take it, so I devised a plan. This competition happened every year according to my teacher, and in grade 10, there was a regionals competition after. I swore that I had to win next year. The whole year, I taught myself various math equations, and my friend helped me with everything. I spent a whole year reviewing just to prove this entitled mother wrong. The next year, I entered the competition more ready than ever. I saw the boy again. Now even his mother is boasting about how he couldn't sleep knowing that he was going to win again, and that he is excited about the regionals. Everything she said just encouraged me to do better. The exam was kinda hard, but I managed to answer most of the test questions, while I heard Entitled Kid say it wasn't that hard. I was not confident that I would win, but I was hoping. The announcements came, and they said only one got a score of 40 and above in every grade level. The Entitled Kid was smirking, thinking it was him, and telling his mom, "Regionals, here we go." But to his surprise, I won. The look of shock on Entitled Mother's and Entitled Kid's face was worth it. They didn't utter a word. His teacher was just standing there shocked. I gave them a big smirk and went up to the stage, accepting the prize and everything. When I went down the stage, I saw Entitled Mother crying and saying, "My boy was supposed to win. He was supposed to go to the regionals." And once I heard her cries of agony, the whole year of reviewing was paid off. I got second place in the regional, and I became friends with the guy in first place. Overall, it was a great experience, and I'm glad that I don't have to see Entitled Mother and Entitled Kid again because there is no math competition in grade 11. So this Entitled Mother's head was so far up her own butt that she thought it was okay to boo somebody else at a competition? Like, okay, your son won, you can f*** off now. Congrats to OP for proving that a whole lot of hard work can pay off in the end. I can only imagine the sense of accomplishment that you had when you got off that stage and saw the Entitled Mother crying. Our next story today comes to us from a deleted account. Try to take away job, quit in glory. Let's jump right in. This is the story of my wife getting ProRevenge. At 7 months pregnant, we knew my wife wasn't going to return to work after maternity leave, but she had planned on working right to the day her water broke. A few months before her due date, there was a restructuring of the organization. She actually got a promotion and a small raise, but her new direct manager was at the corporate level and had never treated my wife with respect in her previous role. Over the next few months, as my wife started a very major project, she kept detailed notes of everything to make sure that there was a smooth transition when she went out on leave. At this same time, her new boss started being excessive with micromanaging. It finally got to the point that the director, we'll call Patrice, because goddammit Patrice, started slowly pulling responsibilities away from my wife. To us, it looked like she was trying to position my wife's role to be eliminated when she was on leave. By law, they only had to have a comparable role when she came back, not the exact same position. It finally reached a head when Patrice called my wife into HR to formally reprimand her. Allegations included bad attitude, unprofessional conduct, and outright lying to coworkers. After talking it over, my wife and I decided to say F them, and she gave her 1 week notice the next day. Crap hit the fan, and there was a lot of questions, especially from coworkers and management above Patrice. My wife just said that with her upcoming leave, she felt it best to exit now. Then there was the transition meeting. She called in Patrice, her coworkers, her leadership, and the vendor that was involved in the project. During that meeting, my wife went through all the project plans to date with a very specific timeline of the project. This timeline included things like notes from previous meetings of what was stated, validation emails from Patrice, requests for meetings to which Patrice declined or simply no-showed. There was the introduction of new processes that Patrice put into place, which proved to drastically delay many checkpoints. My wife told me that after showing the third example of late delivery due to Patrice's lack of response or sudden need to include her friends in the project for feedback, it was apparent to everyone in the room that Patrice was the reason that everything was running behind schedule and over cost. The last slide my wife presented was the last update, the official complaints Patrice had filed with HR with refuting evidence. My wife told me that Patrice was equally furious and embarrassed, and leadership decided to pull the project from her. My wife left her contact info and let them know she would be available for consulting at competitive rates, finished her 1 week notice, and left. There's two things that I'm seeing here. Number one is a possible case for constructive dismissal, and number two is a possible case for discrimination against a pregnant person, because that's totally a thing. Don't you wish you were there for the mic drop moment where she said she'd be available for consulting at competitive rates? I can only imagine what she would charge. Too bad we don't have an update from OP because I'd love to know if they called. Our last story today comes to us from Sister Sist. Power-hungry president sucks the joy out of a local artist collective, ends up having to leave town. Let's jump right in. Posting from a throwaway. I heard all this secondhand as it was happening, so I'll try to be as faithful to the actual events as possible, with the caveat that I wasn't there. A warning and an apology, this is long. For background, my older sister, who I'll call Beth, is married to her high school sweetheart, who I'll call Craig. Beth is a pretty laid-back person, but she has one hot-button trigger that causes her to have zero chill: anyone treating her beloved Craig poorly. Craig is very quiet and kind, just in general a mild-mannered, good-natured guy who's not great at standing up for himself, so he often attracts bad actors who view him as an easy mark. And because he always assumes that other people have good intentions, he's not great at realizing when he's being mistreated. Beth is usually pretty relaxed about things, but she will basically turn into a howling, vengeance-seeking banshee if anyone takes advantage of Craig. Which brings us to 2 or 3 years ago. Craig works a white-collar job remotely, but he's an amateur artist and craftsman as a hobby. He does wood carving, a little bit of light metalwork, and 2D art, mainly pencil sketches and pen and ink illustrations. He joined an artist collective makerspace where he could work on these hobbies around like-minded people, and he absolutely loved it. Whenever I hung out with him and Beth around this time, Craig would excitedly talk about the space and his projects there with infectious enthusiasm. His eyes were practically beaming out of his head whenever it came up. Beth joined too to learn and improve on her own hobby of fiber arts, mainly weaving and dyeing, but she was way less into it than Craig. Some time after this, the president of the makerspace stepped down. It was essentially a volunteer position, though it came with a small, mostly symbolic stipend. Since the makerspace had no actual staff, being president of the makerspace was a huge undertaking that involved being a one-man show for everything. For a start, coordinating with the board, keeping day-to-day operations going, and chasing the grants that kept the lights on. The current president just couldn't do it anymore with his full-time job and announced his intention to vacate the role. Craig had come to love the makerspace, and he figured he had the resources to be an effective president. His job is entirely remote and deliverables based. He can work whatever hours he wants as long as he's meeting his objectives. So he figured he could work out of the makerspace on his laptop and be available there if anyone needed him, and then do the heavy lifting of the role outside work hours. So he threw his hat in the ring. Enter Jamie, a recent industrial design grad. Jamie was known to be flaky and very dramatic, but he'd been a member of the makerspace for a couple of years, almost as long as it had existed, and he felt entitled to be handed the presidency because he had seniority. He lost his darn mind when he heard that Craig had the audacity to go for the same role, and complained to several members about how Craig was massively overstepping. This got back to Craig, who didn't really take it seriously, and it also got back to Beth, who, of course, was already irritated that Jamie was crap-stirring, but kept it to herself. Long story short, Jamie won the member vote by a small margin, which Craig was very gracious about. Craig congratulated Jamie on the victory, then settled back into business as usual. Jamie was not so gracious. He was enraged that Craig had gotten so many votes, and made it known to everyone that he was trying to figure out who had voted for Craig, and that they would pay. Many of the members who had voted for Jamie passively because he'd been around forever and they didn't really know Craig were shocked by this behavior, and started privately expressing regret to each other. But it gets worse. The makerspace had always offered members the perk of sponsoring workshops, meetups, and classes that anyone, members or non-members, could attend. All you had to do was sign up for the space on a first-come, first-served basis and kick up 20% of any profits to the makerspace if you charged a fee. Jamie started preemptively canceling classes and workshops sponsored by anyone on his crap list by blocking off all available reservations during the regular times certain classes would be held. So Craig had traditionally sponsored a popular casting workshop on Wednesday evenings, and suddenly, all Wednesday evenings were booked solid before the sign-up sheet was even available. He tried switching to Thursday, but after just one rescheduled workshop, suddenly Thursday evenings were out too. He tried Tuesdays, but because it was so early in the week, no one could come. Craig was bummed, but was still too good-natured to realize Jamie was intentionally sabotaging him out of spite, despite a righteously angry Beth trying to paint the picture for him of what was going on. Beth was pissed, but she wasn't banshee pissed yet, not until Jamie selectively told the people on his crap list that member fees were going up by almost double. He presented this as a makerspace-wide policy, but he made one crucial error. Somehow, Jamie never picked up on Craig and Beth being married, probably because he was never around both of them at the same time. So Beth flew under his radar, and he didn't raise her member fees, just Craig's and some of Craig's known friends, which confirmed to her that he was intentionally retaliating against Craig. At this point, Beth had steam coming out her ears and went to go talk to the board, since they have the power to cite or even throw out the president. They were uneasy about what she told them, but they said the president was technically allowed to set member fees and they'd keep an eye on things. Beth didn't really believe the board that they'd be keeping an eye on things because Jamie was already dropping the ball all over the place, and the board wasn't making a peep over it. He wanted to be president because of the prestige, but he was never willing to do the work, so he just didn't do it, and things were falling apart. The makerspace was getting late notices on unpaid bills, basic maintenance of the space wasn't getting done, materials weren't being restocked as they ran out, and the record keeping was non-existent. It got so bad that the previous president, who had stepped down because he couldn't handle the time commitment anymore, who had run the makerspace from its inception, quit as a member altogether because he was so saddened and disgusted by how bad things had gotten. He'd put his blood, sweat, and tears into this place, and stepped down from a role he treasured because he believed it was in the best interest of the organization. And now, he had to watch Jamie run this place he loved into the ground out of sheer laziness. Craig was also losing his excitement over the makerspace because he no longer had the space or resources to do the things he enjoyed there. Beth, at this point, had gone from furiously angry to strategically angry, suspecting that Jamie was being shady in more ways than one. She spent a few days being friendly to Jamie and sucking up to him, and then sprung on him the offer to help with the organization's bookkeeping and records. Still not realizing that she was Craig's wife, but knowing that she worked as a project manager in her day job, Jamie saw a chance to get some skilled work done at zero effort to himself, and he happily agreed, and gave her access to the Makerspace's Google Sheets. Not the most high-tech operation. For a little while, Beth bided her time, bringing the financial accounts up to date and continuing to be diabolically friendly to Jamie. After a while of this, she calmly pulled together 6 copies of documents comparing the official organizational income that Jamie was reporting to her with the actual income, which Jamie was completely unaware she was tracking. These documents prove that Jamie was not only skimming money off the top of class and workshop fees, but was actively stealing money from the grants the Makerspace was receiving, which is highly illegal. Beth gave the 6 board members her impeccably compiled proof of what was happening. Almost immediately, the board fired Jamie and issued a lifetime ban from the Makerspace. They were afraid of losing their grants if news came out about the gross misappropriation, so they didn't report Jamie to the authorities, but instead gave him 48 hours to return the stolen funds, the implication being that they would report him if he didn't. He panicked and complied, selling his car quickly to do it and scrounging up the difference in a ton of quick loans from friends, many of whom were Makerspace members, not aware of what was going on. And no, he never paid them back. He's now persona non grata with all of his former friends, and while he still has a clean criminal record, word traveled pretty far in the local artist community, which means he was blacklisted from most of the industrial design jobs in the area and couldn't use his degree if he wanted to stay in town. As far as Beth and Craig knew, he moved away about 6 months after this all went down, but they haven't kept up with him and don't know where he is. The Makerspace board realized their setup was bad, so instead of a single president, they restructured to have a panel of volunteer officers running the operation. Craig is one of them, and has happily thrown himself back into woodworking and metal casting. Beth still helps out with the books. So it was mentioned down in the comments that not only did they not realize that Beth and Craig were married, but Beth and Craig have a hyphenated last name that's extra unusual. So I think what they're saying by that is that Jamie wasn't the sharpest tool in the shed. Check out all 4 OPs linked in the description down below. I hope you have a day that doesn't suck, and we'll see you tomorrow.